All right, guys, here we go with the notes for Chapter 10, News and News Management. Why do we care about news? Why is it so important? Well, there's two things to consider in the broadcast world when it comes to news. The first is the idea of localism. When people want to know what is happening locally that may impact their lives and the people closest to them, most will seek out local news operations. It's the way to know what's happening in your backyard, in your immediate area, in your community. Yes, newspapers still play a role, but by and large, most of the time, when we're thinking about what's happening in our immediate area, we tend to think of our local radio and more so television news outlets. Audiences identify with their local news personalities, often regarding the news anchors or weathercasters as trusted sources and even friends in a way. Maybe not the kind of friends that you call up or chat online or whatever, but they think of people that are within their community. They think of them as their neighbors, if you will. Local news personalities are often very visible in the community, participating in various public events, speaking engagements, getting involved in various sorts of activities. This helps establish a sense of unity or brand with the local media, promoting a greater loyalty among viewers and listeners. There is this idea that if you see the people that bring you the events of the day and they're out and about and they seem like that they're one of you, you tend to connect with them a little better. And that makes the product that they present that much more relatable to the viewer. In addition to establishing a sense of localism, news also helps to build a definable brand in the mind of the audience. And this branding of the news operation helps in generating awareness and building of audience ratings. Again, there's that familiarity aspect. If you feel like you know the people that are bringing you the news of the day, then you're going to create that loyalty. That means you're going to watch. That means the ratings are going to increase because more people are watching. And if you're watching, obviously you're aware that the operation exists. It also helps in marketing to advertisers for obvious reasons. The more people watch the news product, the more advertisers are going to be attracted to advertising on that news product to reach you, the audience. News as content and programming. The cost to produce a single news program is very expensive, especially in terms of capital outlay to acquire talent, equipment, sets, and so on. There is a huge amount of money that goes into place to building sets, to providing news vehicles to go and cover different events. If an operation has a helicopter, of course, that's going to be a big expense. Not to mention all the audio and video equipment, the people you see on camera, the people you see behind the screen, behind the camera and all of that. All of that takes money. It's a huge investment. But by producing multiple hours of news, stations will have a more economical form of programming, resulting in greater economies of scale. So once they make that initial investment, they now have the ability to produce a whole lot of content, which means they can fill their television broadcast day schedule with this particular type of content, which is a significant part of the reason why a lot of television stations that offer news will create several hours of news programming. It's something they control. It's something they can create. And compared to other options, it's actually rather economical. Companies with duopoly operations, local marketing agreements, or joint service agreements tend to rebroadcast news on a sister station, but at a different time period, with the goal of generating even larger reach and penetration in the market. Great example in Raleigh is Channel 5 and Channel 50, which are co-owned by Capital Broadcasting. You will see several hours of WRAL news on the airwaves throughout the day. A lot of that is on Channel 5, but a significant portion of that is also on Channel 50, just at times that the news on 5 is not on. Audiences demand news more often, especially with so many demographic changes in regard to work patterns and lifestyles, leading to new opportunities to reach audiences at different time periods. So it used to be that the news was on just at noon, 6, and 11, before the rise of Fox Network and several other netlets and things like that, and before the whole deregulation that happened with the Telecommunications Act of 1996. But now that there's so many opportunities for vertical integration and companies owning several stations in several markets, that also has created a certain economies of scale, in addition to the fact that the stay-at-home contingent is not as relevant as it once was. And people are doing shift work, which means some people are at home during the day, some are not. So basically, there's a wide berth of audiences that are available at various points throughout the broadcast day. So making news available at several points throughout the day is something that is economically viable for many outlets. Advertisers prefer reaching news audiences who tend to be the most loyal viewers with higher discretionary spending patterns. People that watch the news like to be informed. People that like to watch the news tend to, in most cases, be a little more educated. So to reach those audiences and to educate them about your product or service is something that is really appealing to advertisers. And generally, those that are more educated have more money to spend, which the advertisers would like to help them out with as well. In contrast to television programming, many radio stations have cut back or eliminated news coverage. There's not as much of a desire among radio stations these days to give a lot of time to news coverage, especially various types of music format stations. Weather and traffic, there's still some homage to that, especially in morning drive, to a lesser extent afternoon drive. News updates, there might be a 60-second headline that happens during the morning news, during the morning show. But a lot of news that happens on radio tends to be relegated to the actual news and talk formatted stations. The ability to archive and expand existing news material via digital platforms offers new ways to increase the audience for news. We're seeing all kinds of examples of this with the various platforms you can now get on your television. Things like CBSN, NBC News Now, and several other different news outlets that operate on a local level and a national level, and an international level for that matter. Stations can provide news access to individuals outside of traditional listening and viewing hours. A challenge for broadcasters is how to use these digital platforms to push the audience back to traditional broadcasting after sampling the news from the platform. So the various networks and the various local broadcast stations are now trying to reconcile what it means to provide news coverage through online and streaming apps while also maintaining the original product, the broadcast signal. So you are seeing more and more that the networks and the local stations are embracing these online platforms, such as the national networks that are shown there in the example. Also, many local stations now providing their own apps, such as Channel 5 providing its own app, and then other stations embracing utilization within other apps. Channel 11 is a good example of you being able to get their news online through various different third-party apps that you can use on your smartphone or on your television. But it still is not 100% clear how well making your content online is going to help in actually getting people to tune in to the television. It definitely helps with the brand recognition, but how that all translates still remains to be seen. One thing that is starting to increase more is advertisers paying attention to what's happening online and being willing to spend advertising dollars online. A number of native digital news operations have grown in size as well. The term native implying that a true digital enterprise not evolving from another established news organization, such as a broadcast network or a local TV station, is in place there. This would be something like Newsy, for example, that provides services but doesn't have any sort of broadcast connection. So we're seeing more and more of that happening in terms of availability to consumers. With that, let's take a break, and we'll catch up with section 2 of your notes over on part B of the Chapter 10 video.